All right. So next up, speaking of preparation, a guy that's been talking about preparation forever is Steve Quayle, my good friend Steve Quayle, a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing here in a couple of weeks. SteveQuayle.com is his website, and he's got to turn it. Steve, you got to turn your video on if you want to be seen. And
I thought it was on. I apologize.
It's all right. We'll get you. I don't know where it is anymore. They changed things around.
Do you have me now?
Eric, the text says yes. Thumbs up.
Good. There I am.
There you are.
Well, we're going to go right into it. There's a lot of events happening, but it's like they're not sequential anymore. Everything's happening at once. So I asked Celeste to come on. She has her own blog. She has her own website, but she's probably one. I've known Celeste. We've been friends for probably at least 15 to 20 years. Former FEMA trained. She's been with DHS. The lady knows what's going on, but she is probably almost, and I say this is a genuine compliment, sometimes I got to rein her back because she goes too deep. And so I've asked Celeste to come on today and just give everybody an update, because this is a woman that knows how to make soap, raise goats, and talk about the most complex physics in the universe. And so, Celeste, nice to have you on with Doug and I today. But it's important, Celeste, that we get right into this. So I asked Celeste to go for Doug, this is only an hour, but so we'll get right into it. Celeste, talk, if you would, about what we talked in the order. Take it from what you think is the most important and work into whatever we have time for, okay?
Okay, sounds great. So I think we need to start with just a brief overview, and that is that the cracks of heaven and the firmament and under the ocean have opened. You know, they've been opened by a variety of different things. Man has blown holes in portals. There's alien entities, as we've discussed for many times. So I think and it's a danger to all biological life. So the cracks that we're seeing are in the heavens, under the earth, in biological life, the whole, everything. I'm also seeing a coupling of these different things. So what's happening in the heavens is coupling with what's happening in our lives and in our bodies and what's happening under the ocean. So when we look at something like volcanoes or earthquakes, we can't just look at it in a compartmentalized view. We must look at it as, I guess, in medicine, they would say a holistic view. We need to put it in perspective. It would be looking at one verse in the Bible and just taking one verse out of context. We could easily become a cult. And that's the same way that we have to look at all these changes coming upon us right now in their proper context. So we talked about talking about volcanism. And before we get into that, I think what we need to do is begin to look at space weather and factor that in to our lives and look at it just like we would our local weather. And that may sound strange, looking at the sun, looking at cosmic rays, looking at these strange dashboards. NASA has a great dashboard for space weather enthusiasts. It's free. There's a learning curve. You have to learn how to use it, and we might as well learn how to use it right now when the sun is quiet, because we're about ready to go into increased solar activity. So once the solar flares and CMEs start hitting, we're going to know how to read the readings of what we're seeing. And there are apps out there. I use the Suspicious Observers app, and it will let you know things like when a volcano erupts, when the earthquakes, if there's a health alert, and we're going to talk about health today. And right now, spaceweather.com just issued an alert that there's a large hole in the sun's atmosphere and it's Earth facing. So basically, Earth is connecting magnetically with the sun. and it's going to spew a stream of solar wind in our direction. It's going to produce minor G1 class geomagnetic storms. Many people in the northern latitudes, of course, will see auroras, and there's about a 35% chance that you are going to see an aurora. So also on the horizon for the next 10 days there is a planetary alignment, a cluster of the inner planets, and those also magnetically connect with the Earth. And what that will do is produce an uptick in earthquakes. And we saw a big earthquake in India region, and there was just it was where did it go? I lost it. A 6.1 today off Bandon, Oregon. So we're starting to see an uptick in these higher earthquakes at 6 point and higher and above. And we need to do that, and that's going to happen during this 10-day period of not only the magnetic connection between the sun and the earth, but also because of this planetary alignment.
So Steve and Celeste, if I'm hearing you right, and so everything's connected, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
The space weather, the Earth, our Earth climate, the planetary alignment, the volcanoes and earthquakes, and even the sun activity, which we talk about quite frequently here. Everything's connected. That's right, Steve? I mean, it's all kind of interconnected. Okay. All right. Celeste, I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
Okay, so the blood echoes are showing that the areas of concern that we can expect some big earthquakes on the horizon are India, Indonesia, and South America, with an emphasis on South America, probably in the Peru area. The coronal hole is at 5.12, which is a low risk. Of course, as you know, for volcano watchers, the Chebooluk volcano erupted on the 24th, and it is still erupting. That's up on the Kamchatka Peninsula. The plume reached 70,000 feet, which is considered a stratospheric injection, which will cool our planet. So we were already headed towards a very cold winter, and that is going to intensify.
You're not going to tell me it's going to be a cold winter up north where Steve's at, where I'm at, are you?
Yeah, it's going to be a murderous thing. And can you hear me now?
Now we can. Yeah, you had yourself muted there, bro.
I apologize. Here's the bottom line, and I think, Celeste, I want you to get the bottom line because, forgive me, we only get so many minutes on, and you know too much important stuff from FEMA. Even right now, let me ask you this. Why does DARPA need a huge underground facility by Friday? And as you know, Doug, our film crew has been in Bandon, Oregon, the whole area. But Celeste, by Friday, okay, they're talking about Friday. Don't sugarcoat anything, okay? Go for it. What is going on? What is the government getting ready for? Bam, 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 bam. And just give it to the bottom line, because based on by Friday, they need a huge underground facility and they won't answer the question. The answer is, I'll do it for everybody else. China Lake and additional underground bases, the U.S. military, have been rendered inoperable. So what does DARPA need? And did you see that story yet?
I haven't.
Okay.
No.
So please forget, and please, I want people to benefit from your knowledge of being an insider. Tell them in a bottom line where everything's going, please, as far as what the government's up to and their acceleration for it, okay? Because you were a worst case scenario planner with some of these people. So go ahead, please.
Okay, so basically what's happening is we have a convergence of celestial, firmament, terrestrial events that it's like a 1 in 10,000 year event is what we're looking at now. It doesn't have to be that bad, but that's what it's looking at. Some people are saying once in a 400-year event, but many are beginning to gravitate to the 1 in every 10,000 years. That basically puts us about when Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden and because of sin. Just think about the ramifications of what that did to creation. And it threw the world into this ice age. And we are circling back to that time right now. That's why everybody's in a hurry. They were thinking that this cold weather was going to, I'm getting some feedback. Cold weather was not going to hit us till about 2026 to 2030, but it's way ahead. We are starting to see these effects now. That's why DARPA's in a hurry. These are extinction level events when the earth goes cold. And the only way that people survived in the past was they went underground. And so that's why you're seeing the big, intense push to go underground. Another reason or another thing that they thought might help that was not in the past is to turn to synthetic biology to enhance humanity with all these synthetic things, which is the merging of transhumanism, which Steve covered last year at his conference. So they also felt that synthetic biology might allow humanity to survive. Every culture, every religion believes that this is the last cycle. And then, they vary what happens after the cycle is over. But that's why there's the hurry.
Interesting. So, Steve, I mean, this corresponds with what you've been finding. This corresponds with what you've been saying. Celeste has been a mover and shaker within FEMA, coming out now and saying, "Okay, this is why." And essentially, you've got all these convergences taking place, right? And
and Doug, I want to make a correction because this isn't a 3-day event, and I don't mean to take umbrage with the issue, but we're talking about a life-changing series of events. And Celeste's specialty is in gardening and all that stuff, even hydroponics. But even the things that are happening now, there's death coming to the gardens. Obviously, our farmers are financially dying. I pray they don't literally die. But Celeste, will you talk to about just how the food, take the food issue on, because you grow your own stuff, you know all this stuff. Take the food on, because I can't get through to people. And Doug, it's not an extra can of beans or peas. They've got to prepare for the long run. They have to have seeds. They have to know how to grow stuff. They have to know how to get supplements. So Celeste, take that. I think this is more important, because as I talk to you today and we're listening, this is our first time on the radio. First of all, give out your website so people can go and see all the voluminous articles. Go ahead and do that right now.
Okay, it's shepherdsheart.life, and that's my website. shepherdsheart.life. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So basically what's happening with plants and animals, I did 5 bullet points that I think everybody should take home. The plants right now are less productive, even from last year. Some of my favorite heirloom varieties, I got 1 tomato. Usually those plants have like 200 5-ounce to 2-pound tomatoes. And on many of them, I got 1 tomato, to the degree I ripped out my greenhouses. That's what I'm in the process of right now. They have less color, which that translates to less phytonutrients for your health. We need those phytonutrients and those different colors in our body because they give us different vitamins and minerals. So we're not going to be getting that. The plants are hugging the ground because it's so cold in many areas. So what that means is my 1 tomato versus 200 tomatoes. So needless to say, I'm not doing a ton of canning this year. And due to the collapsing magnetosphere and the environmental changes, what I'm noticing is that the plants are really confused. And so are the animals. They don't know. Like, I was harvesting my pie cherries, and the pie cherry tree was blooming at the same time. This was a week ago. A cherry tree isn't supposed to do that. And like 3 years ago, my asparagus came up in September. And of course, then the next year it didn't produce, and I did not have an asparagus crop this year. So this is what we're facing. And then the plants are having an inability to uptake the minerals and vitamins and nutrients that they need. I throw a ton of soil amendments. I spend thousands of dollars on soil amendments to make sure that my crop is nutrient dense, but it's not translating into the fruit and the vegetables. So those are 5 takeaways that you need to know. On top of that, I just did a special report several weeks ago. The UN did release 2 documents totaling 1,000 pages. And basically, they knew that the crop this year would be very low. So it would be at a 20% level. And I'm going to read this so I get it right. And so the crops that you're getting at the grocery store right now, whether they're fresh or canned, are, except for the fresh, they're from last year's crop. This year, there's only 20% of last year's crop, which that was reduced from past years. So then what the UN is doing is breaking that 20% that's going to be available to you starting this fall, maybe even as soon as next month, into 1,000. They're going to break it down to 1,000 or a kilocalorie, and you are going to be buying your food by the calorie. And that really brings home some biblical verses where it talks a whole day's wages for just like a handful of barley. So you're going to be seeing those exponential price raises, I would say, starting next month. And you're also not going to see a lack of access to food. I went to the town last week, and there were many things that there was a lot of empty space. There just was not product. Canneries are shutting down because there's no food to put in the cans. So everybody needs to start investing in buy an herb, buy something that you can eat. If you like sprouts, if you like veggies, start learning to grow them indoors. There is a learning curve. I am going to be making available some tutorials on that because it does take a little bit of balance. You have to balance the light and the humidity, have a good growing system, that type of thing. But you can do it. You can do it in an apartment. You can do it in a mobile home. You can do it in a log cabin. You can do it if it's minus 100 degrees out. And I'm actually in the process of moving my growing operation from the outdoors indoors. And I've been doing quite a bit of that through the years. I even have a citrus orchard. I grow my own lemons, limes, oranges, bananas, all sorts of things here where it gets minus 50 degrees in the winter. So that's so basically the bottom line for Steve is the backyard crops are failing. The commercial crops are failing. And the synthetic and GMO crops are failing. So you've got all 3 tiers of the food supply system that are failing. A few isolated farmers are having success, but I would say probably 97% are not. So that's what we're looking at for food. Now, as far as the animals, there is more morbidity, which is illness in animals. Everything from sneezing to diarrhea to, I had a chicken yesterday that just croaked and she was only a year old. She had no business dying. Increased mortality, which is dying animals. That started probably 5 years ago, and every year it's increasing. Last winter, I would say I lost 1 chicken a week. And it was environmental factors. They have a heated, enclosed system. There was no reason for them to die. And I've been raising chickens for, I don't know, maybe 55, 60 years. So I've also noticed something that is equally applicable to humans is unnatural appetites. Like my dog, I put some corn on the cobs out in my staging area to feed my chickens, and my little dog Zippy ate the corn on the cob. So, and the chickens are not eating normal either. Either they like a food or they don't like a food. Everything seems to have this unnatural appetite. And even in humans, we have been engineered into wanting to consume human flesh. And in the circles that I am running and the information that I've been getting, and actually it started way back, I would say around 2000, people would come to my website and say, or the search engine information would say, is it legal to eat human flesh? And that's only increasing because like rice, the sodas, tomatoes, many products at the grocery store that you are consuming say natural flavors, and oftentimes that's human cells.
Yeah, I hate Celeste. That's probably the most powerful thing that coming from you, someone that has raised animals, garden, herbs, etc. Doug, what she's saying, and I think I just want to, I'm a little more forceful in just saying this. That's if there's they call it a money statement, that's the money statement. Doug, all of the flavoring has been designed to change us genetically to basically want and crave human flesh. Is that not true, Celeste?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Doug, how many people do you think right now that will see this, program will really get it? And then you have the other aspect of it, Celeste. You have celebrities and then all of the elite openly coming out, or not so much openly, celebrities are just talking about human flesh. That is part of the UN plan, is it not? That's part of the devil's plan to get us to eat each other out of existence. Is that true? Based on your, in the government. So, and Doug, this is really a critical point. And thank you for having Celeste on. She knows what the plan of the enemies are. And this is probably one of the most powerful statements because, again, all of the flavorings, what do they call it? Semonyx or something? SEMONYX. Remember, they have the list of all of the food additives. This is what's going on right now, Doug. And now there's the push. Why is there a taboo against eating human flesh? And even Muslims and mullahs are saying it's okay to eat your enemy. Just don't eat your brother, Muslim. But Celeste, continue on. Here's what I want. Because I'm seeing some stuff coming in on my screen, which I'm glad to discuss with you guys off air. But there's a lot of, how do I say this? You use the term extinction level event. Would you please explain that, how the government looks at that? Because people just say, they think dinosaurs. Please go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is such a critical point. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so an extinction level event has happened several times in Earth's history. And, the dinosaurs became extinct. The megafauna has gone extinct. That's like your woolly mammoths, your saber-toothed tigers, that type of thing. The things are found in, I can't think of it right now.
Oh, Siberia or in the permafrost.
The tar pits at La Brea tar pits. And so basically, that's what we're facing right now. And that's why there's the big scramble, because this is an extinction level event. This can we have this convergence between the temperature, the collapse of the magnetosphere, the cosmic rays coming in. It can change DNA. It can eradicate species, and new species can evolve, or not evolve, but, come into being, especially if they're being engineered. We know that there is a new classification of life that they are implementing, and they're filling that organizational chart. right now, and that can include spirits, demons, the synths, anything. So who knows what we're going to see in the days to come.
Wait a second. If I can interrupt there, I wouldn't gloss over that too much. New classification of life, including demon spirits and such?
Yes. I did an article about it 3 years ago. The Linnean system of classification was, they knew this was going to happen, so they needed to change to allow for different life forms on planet Earth.
Oh.
So it was a 10-year project, and about 3 years or 5 years ago, they implemented it, and I caught it on a peer journal and then did an article about it. It's very interesting.
Or we can just get Steve's book, or any one of his books, Xenogenesis included, right?
Yeah. Terminated. Here's what we're talking about. And Celeste, as an insider, knows their plans, and they're not fuzzy. We don't get our bomb shelters with swimming pools and film cinemas and bowling alleys. Doug, everybody's headed underground, and this is something that I think is really critical. And Celeste, if you want to address this, what has happened? We have allowed ourselves, instead of when I say universal, I don't mean that in New Age term, but have a broad spectrum of understanding and knowledge to be compartmentalized. Everybody's a specialist, but nobody's a generalist. I know of nobody, again, genuine compliment, that knows it across the board. So when she breezes over, that's why I made you come back to it, extinction level event. Fukushima was classified by everyone in the deep black pool, meaning top secret, ultra secret, most people don't know they exist, as an extinction level event. Do you want to address what's going on with the mutagenesis in the ocean and just how many people live on the ocean? I mean, it's staggering to me that people do not realize that an ant knows enough to store food, a squirrel knows enough to store food, all of the elite store food, but yet everybody else, and it's not to sell food. There's going to be no food. And I want to just say this, turn it right over to you. Basically, what Celeste has just said, there's going to be calorie charges, not food. If a can of beans has X number of calories, that's what's going to be priced. And the UN is already talking about getting humans to eat insects and eating, what I would call upper tier Soylent Green. So Celeste, again, the extinction level in the Pacific Ocean, will you deal with that? Because, while I got you on the television blog talk or whatever, the Hagman show, I want people to understand you do know what you're talking about. You were, your own words to me, you were one of them. And so now tell the people just really what's going on behind the scenes, because this is like, in my opinion, this is like, and I'm not comparing you to the Wizard of Oz, but it's like Dorothy, when everybody thought the Wizard of Oz was this great thing. It's just a guy pulling bells and whistles. But in this case, it's Luciferian, it's fallen angel, and it's terminal to the human race. Take it from there.
I want to cover one thing that I just feel like I really need to cover, and then we'll do the ocean. If you think that you're safe eating plants for vegans, and if you've decided that meat isn't the way to go, I just sent you an email last week about the nanoblood. So we've got these nanoparticle swarms that have been deployed, and they have various missions. And what I started noticing about 5 years ago was it started with a St. John's wort plant. It started to bleed. Do you remember that email?
Yes, I do. I do remember that.
Okay, so this year it's spreading. I have many, many plants that are bleeding. Actually, I can send some pictures later on, and then you can post them, of plants bleeding. So even if you're eating a vegetarian product, you are getting blood. Now, the only way for that plant to get that blood is from a nanoparticle, because I'm certainly not spreading blood on my plants or anything, and I'm sure I'm not the only one having it, this problem. So whose blood is it? What is its mission? And, is it fallen angel technology? Is it the blood of the Nephilim or the giants? I don't know. That part I don't know. All I know is what I see in the garden is bleeding plants, and that's impossible, supposedly.
Right. And if you remember, I think you and I spoke during that time about finding human blood components, plasma components, in some of the chemtrail spray. Isn't it funny?
Yes.
We're shedding all the innocent blood of the innocent. We, not us, but that we put up with it, okay, as Americans. And now it's raining blood on us. You want to address that? Because I remember that, Celeste. I remember our discourse over the email on that they were literally, and Doug, get this, it's not just barium and aluminum and stuff that is in the chemtrail spray, but it's human blood components as they are mutated with nanobots or radiation or everything. Take that to its logical conclusion. I mean, what you're saying is we have become a bloody world. And now, because we were feasting literally on the blood of the innocents, now the blood of the innocents, however it's being delivered through whatever mechanism, that's what's transforming us. Is that not correct?
Yes, and actually there was an article, I think it was about 2007, 2008. It was called The Biology of a Snowflake. And if you know anything about rain and snow, they have a nucleus. And this is a government in emergency management was put out. And it talked about the various life forms that were raining down upon the earth. And they believe in panspermia, and that earth was seeded from an extraterrestrial source. So that was a government document. It is now purged from the web. You cannot find it. I do have a copy of it.
Go ahead,
well,
Steve.
Doug, do you get the ramifications?
Oh,
of
yeah.
Yeah. And again, please, I say that as an exclamation point. Celeste, if everybody in the world were to understand this, I would pray that the Lord would grant them that understanding. So it's in that realm. So now address what's going on in the ocean, because you are in FEMA, DHS. You know all the radiological charts. You know what human tissue dies. Yet they changed the entire, if you will, narrative on radioactivity and its lethality or lethal doses. Take that from a Fukushima standpoint forward, if you would, because I mean we're really in big trouble because the oceans are dead and dying, but also the radioactivity that's pooling in the seafood, and people have cesium-137 in their bloodstream, and you can test for that. Strontium, all radioactive nuclides, even plutonium. So share with us, if you would. This is so critical, Doug, because people just brush off Fukushima as if it's just another Japanese name that's hard to pronounce. Go ahead, Celeste.
So I have this really interesting and it's very simple story about this. So, well, first off, I'm going to tell one other thing. So David and I, my beloved deceased husband, we bought a case of tuna just like a week before Fukushima. I still have one can of that tuna. I'm saving it for a special occasion because I won't buy any of that stuff. And I won't, typically you give oyster shells to chickens. I'm not giving oyster shells to my chickens. I find other forms of calcium to fortify their eggs. So it's 1 month after Fukushima, and I'm doing a presentation of my soap at a health food store. And of course, the manager wants to see my peppermint soap with spearmint leaves. So she pulls it out, and to my horror, it's pumpkin orange. Now, I color my soaps with, at that time, chlorophyll, which is the substance in plants that makes them green. So I was like, I didn't know what happened. This is 1 month after Fukushima. So I go tearing home, and I make soap, a lot of soap, and it's at different stages. Some is curing, some is in packaging, some is in bins, that type of thing. And so I got all my peppermint soaps out. Every single one of them had turned pumpkin orange. It was some oxidative, because chlorophyll is a living thing. and it changed it pumpkin orange, all of my soaps. And that's what it's doing to the sea life. That's what it's doing to our bodies. That's why I just wrote my new book about electromagnetic radiation protection solutions, because we need to know how to protect ourselves from these events, whether there's or Fukushima.
Doug, here's the thing. The amount of information, I know people can suffer from basically just not only information overload, but I'm going to use a new word. It's the ramification overload or the denial of ramifications. And I think that's the thing, Celeste. The powers that be have separated cause and effect, and also with no cognitive critical thinking any longer. Cosmic radiation causes aging, causes oxidation of the cells. It basically is not a good thing. The magnetosphere is collapsing. At this point, because of your background with the government and all the studies, and by the way, I don't know anybody that reads more than you do. If you can, I mean, I just don't know. Again, my compliments. What I want, ladies and gentlemen, to understand is that you can go on her website, because she's not only cutting edge, she's a knife sharpener. She knows what she's talking about. My heavenly brother, her husband, who's with the Lord, was a rare man. And I'm saying that because I've never met anybody like David. Never have. I don't think there'll ever be another one. So I go back a long way. But the point that I'm trying to make now is that her website is so critical. I go to her stuff, and I want to put a pitch out here. Seven Thunders was sealed up by the Lord himself until the time of the end. John was not allowed. John the Revelator was not allowed to share what he had seen and heard. Celeste did the best exegesis, I believe, of anything I've ever read. And it's that critical, because I kept hearing in my spirit, seven thunders, seven thunders, seven thunders. I heard it. By the way, my publishing company from 40 years ago when I started, Celeste, was called End Time Thunder Publishing. So I think it's important that people avail themselves. So again, and they'll put it on the screen, but give out and spell it out, because some people are going to misspell shepherd. They'll put in, just spell it out for people. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there's a better series of articles. You probably have to read them twice, but I just don't know of anything. I go to her stuff because she can think in the realms I don't think in. I just, I've got so much on my plate, but she knows how to put the stuff on the plate that you can eat, that you can live with. Go ahead, Celeste.
So it's Shepherd's Heart Life, and it's S-H.
Steve, you're going to mute, brother. There we go. Okay, go ahead, Celeste.
Okay, it's SHEPHERDSHEART.life, LIFE.
All right, and that's shepherdsheart.life. It's on the screen, folks. If you're watching this, it's on the screen. And I'm going to tell you, I did not know about this until, I don't know, maybe a week ago. And Celeste, a ton of great information on there. So this is good. And but in the larger scale, I think what Steve is getting at in the larger sense, we are really in a world of the pain is coming, isn't it? I mean, the pain is coming to all of us. I'm not sure if we lost everyone. Steve,
yeah,
go ahead.
No, I'm here. Something's with my connection too. I think it's important that people understand that the pain is already happening on a cellular level. They're killing us with nanobots. They're killing us with additives in the atmosphere. That's why Mike Adams and Celeste, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, will be at the Gen 6 conference, and I'm telling you that you need to get her reports. But beyond that, Doug, people always think of the knock on the door, the red flag is a red list. Let me just say that. The point is that you need to be thinking not only tactically in that realm, but practically. What are you eating that's poisonous? I remember seeing the list, Celeste, of all of the food additives with human baby parts, and it was so disgusting. It was so disgusting. And even in the organic food world, that stuff still rains down. So this is a supernatural, sinister, evil plot and plan. So please, ladies and gentlemen, understand this. Celeste, if I had to ask you, and I'm going to put you on the spot, okay, for my sake, and for Doug's sake and everyone's sake, given what you're seeing in all the journals, all the publications you're aware of as an insider, you know where to look, you live there. What is your time frame? And just seeing everything that's going on, the time frame for where everything changes. It's been gradual, but do you see it continuing to be gradual, or do you think there's going to be a shockwave happen and it's going to get people's attention?
I think we are already seeing the shockwave.
Okay.
I think that this fall is going to be brutal. And if you don't see it, I'm sorry, you're not looking. There are ostriches. If you stick your head in the sand, you're not going to be seeing what's blasting at you. But it's begun. Here where I live, the temperatures are 30 to 50 degrees below normal. This is the summer. I experience minus 50 degrees in the winter normally. I am preparing for minus 100 this winter. And I just talked with my wood guy last night, and who goes up into the high country. And he said he's also expecting a bad winter. He said everything, all the signs are there. I can see that here with all the animals, the bees, the ants, the chipmunks, everybody's saying, well, and the Lord told me, shut down your farm by September 1st. Have it all put to bed. Have all your food harvested by September 1st. That's what the Lord told me. So,
can I ask what part of the planet you might live on? You don't have to be specific, but are we talking Pacific Northwest, east, northeast, or?
I live in the Rocky Mountains in Montana.
Okay, so but this is going to be nationwide, globally,
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I had to bump my regular scheduled show today to be on your show.
Thank you,
but
by
I
the
was
way.
going to brief my patrons on cold weather tips for cold weather growing and tips for cold weather survival, because basically we are going to be living in Siberian type climate. And so we need to get used to that fact and get ready for that. Some of you will have more time, and others like myself, no.
Okay.
It's done now.
I want to just say this real quick, Stephen, with your patience. But Celeste, I was speaking with my neighbor who's lived here forever, and she's experienced many seasons, and she grows things, crops, and she said something's wrong with the weather. I mean, just this morning when I saw her, she said something is wrong with the weather. And everything that you had gone through, described in terms of crops and such, she had mentioned about, and we even have the leaves that are turning early, the lack of certain animals that we usually see. Yeah, so you're right on the money, and I think your time frame is 100%. And thank you, by the way, for bumping your normal broadcast to come on today. Appreciate it.
Well, hey, Doug.
Yeah.
And Celeste, did I hear you correctly that you're saying that by September 1st to have all your crops in, or what did you just say?
So that's what the Lord told me. Have all your crops in, have your farm put to bed, which there's winterizing that needs to be done on a farm. So that's what the Holy Spirit told me to do. And so I am doing it. I'm running around like a crazy woman, but it will be done.
Yeah, that's days from now.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is the thing too, Doug. This is the thing that is accelerating. The word now, acceleration. Well, I don't think you can even use a word like that anymore. I can say this: it's spherically imploding. Everything is coming at once. And Celeste, when you were doing your studies for FEMA and everything, you all hear the story, or we heard the story, 3 days food, but with the trucking industry, the canning industry, everything is shutting down because there's no food. how do you see that? Or when you were, what do you call it? Worst case gaming? What do you call that in your world? When you plan for the worst and you have all these exercises around them?
What was worst case scenario?
Pardon?
Worst case scenario.
And worst case scenario, tell people that how you see this worst case scenario unfolding, not just with gardening. We've already covered that, but bottom line it for you. So if you're on in a group or a committee and you guys are bottom lining it, I mean, bottom line it for everybody, because this is probably Doug. This will be one of the most important shows for the people that get it. Okay, so go ahead, please, and I'll shut up, because you got to take, bottom line it. And listen, you've heard me say that for 20 years, overuse it, but bottom line it. Don't hold back.
So you need shelter. I would say consider your shelter at minus 100 degrees. Even if you live in Arizona, you're going to have to start thinking about that. Store seeds. I mean, if you have food stored, that's great. But this is, I don't know how long this will take, the process. We're looking at long term. In the past, what we've enjoyed for the last 100 years or so is a brief time compared to our planet naturally gravitates to cold, an ice age. Look at Psalm 147. That was my wake-up moment. I was watering tomatoes, was my wake-up moment that the Lord could take and freeze the planet in a second and the next day have it searing hot. And you have to be prepared for both. You need to think water source. What are you going to do for water if it's frozen or if it's scorching? So the Lord told me in December, he said, 2019 will be fire and ice. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I do now. And we just have to prepare for those extremes. Your clothing, make sure, if you live in Arizona, make sure you have a warm hat, gloves, a winter coat, maybe some long underwear. And those in the north, make sure that you have a pair of shorts or a tank top or a t-shirt, that if it gets searing hot the next day, at the Lord's command, you can do that. So those are some of the things. Think outside the box. I was out doing gardening and I thought it was going to be an ordinary day. And I found these like parasitic orange tendrils strangulating my plants. I mean, we are going to see life forms, as Steve's talked about for many years, giants. We're going to see spirits, demons. You're going to have to start thinking outside of the box. And one of the problems with the cosmic rays is they thwart our ability to think outside the box and then make decisions. So that's one of the real important things that you need to know. When these cosmic rays happen, and they're going to be happening in increasing amounts, there's going to be many behavior changes, and you're going to have to overcome them. And the best way that I know how to overcome them is through the Bible and through prayer and being in Jesus Christ, because then you're a new creation.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think, too, the thing is that if people will take a calendar, and this is basic, Celeste, but most people don't. I mean, just what you use in a day, just how many glasses of water you take. Because even wells, I have a pump well, a hand well, and I live in Bozeman, Montana. It gets cold here. But the point is you're north of me quite a bit, but it's gonna impact everyone. And I think, again, we're watching a planet that said, we don't need you, God, but we also know that Jesus is coming, and before he comes, it's going to get pretty bad. And pretty bad means that if the Lord told you to shut your farm down by September 1st, and as bad as I am with time, that's 3 days? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. I want to share this too about Branson, Doug. When last year Branson, Celeste was there, you were here, and this is important because Celeste will be there. And I would encourage those of you who are especially widows.
Wait, is she going to
and
talk?
widows-
Is she going to talk?
I'm sorry.
Is she going to?
No, she's not talking.
Okay.
No, she's not going to speak, but she's going to be there. And obviously, people know who she looks like. But she has a situation where explain how people can support you, because what she does, Doug, she tutors her individual Patreon supporters, and she gives a service to the people that support her. And I can say this, that I don't know of someone who has more to offer and what I would call battlefield trench starvation tactics, that's a new word for you, than Celeste. So Celeste, tell how people can support you, because I do. I mean, you know that. And
Yep.
and I believe it's imperative. There's so many individuals out there that are they've lost a spouse, widows and widowers, but you give practical stuff. I can give the big picture, but the big picture doesn't put, food on their plate. So take the whatever time you've got and just share, how people can support you.
And we have
it's
4 minutes.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have different ways that you can support me. I do have Patreon, and unfortunately, I played with Patreon and I made 2 accounts. So make sure that you do the Shepherd's Heart Farm Patreon account, because the Shepherd's Heart one is not any good. And then also PayPal. And there are people that prefer not to use the system, and I understand that. So there are people that send me checks, and unfortunately, those folks don't get a chance to access I haven't figured out a way to have them access like my special briefings and that type of thing. And then also buying my book, Electromagnetic Protection Radiation Solutions. And then I am working on another book.
Cool. Steve, do you want to say something?
No, I'll just say this, Doug. Again, thank you for having Celeste on. I have known her for maybe 2 decades, 20 years, but it's critical that people are always wanting information. But what Celeste does, she walks people through it. And so, ladies and gentlemen, again, I can tell you that her report on 7 Thunders, I believe, is so prophetic and so important that it's one of the things that you need to get a hold of her for. And what do you charge for that?
I haven't put that up for sale yet.
Okay. Well, it's that important. So, Doug, here's the deal. I'm watching earthquake reports come into me that normal people don't get. It's not bragging. It's just coming in. Now they're smelling sulfur dioxide in the Salton Sea. And oh boy, that's below sea level. We're seeing that the original earthquake off of Bandon, Oregon was 6.4. Doug, the USGS and others have gag orders on them from being able to tell people what's getting ready to happen. It's going to hit like a ton of bricks.
Marvelous.
Yes.
Shake, rattle, and roll.
Yeah.
There is one thing. So way back when, we could have all been, of course, don't forget, many of these reports were CIA and agency classified, so we did not have access to them, we as the general public. But there were 3 scientists, young scientists on the way. There were thousands of microquakes off of Washington State, maybe 17 years ago. And they had placed instrumentation, and we would have known a lot of what was going on geologically and under the oceans with this movement and what we are facing. And unfortunately, they were mysteriously killed on the way to pick up those instruments. And I'll never forget the day. It was a straight stretch of road. It was a logging truck, supposedly. It was clear weather. There was no reason for that accident to happen other than to prevent those men from getting accessing the data. And then what happened is that when whoever did get that data later on down the road, it never made it to the public. So it was buried so that we would not see it.
Wow. Celeste, thank you so very much. That's disconcerting. And people, where can, in the 30 seconds I've got left, where can people find out about that? Because I don't remember that. Or is that something that have you talked about this and published anything about this, about that accident? 2 guys?
I did on my old website, but when David died, I lost that website.
All right.
Was just one of those things.
Okay.
So now you can't find the data there. It's nowhere to, I mean, I've hunted for it. There is no mention of those microquakes. There's no mention of the whole thing. And it was over a period of 1 to 2 years. So.
Oh, wow. Folks, plan on going to Branson. Absolutely. Meet Celeste there. shepherdsheart.life is her website. Steve Quayle from stevequayle.com. Steve, God bless you. We're out of time, brother. We're out of time, Celeste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That'll do it for me, folks. Good night.